Okay, good morning mga ka-lockdown. Magandang umaga po. Wherever you are, maayong aga, maayong buntag, naimbag na bigat. Assalamualaikum. Good morning. Welcome to today's CLRG webinar talk show. I am Rafael Montes Jr. You can call me Kuya Paeng, and I am working from home in Pasay City, while our CLRG webinar team is zooming from Quezon City, Pampanga, and Laguna. Today's learning event is being brought to you by the Center for Local and Regional Governance of UP and CPAG. If you are joining us today for the first time, CLRG is a public service unit of the University of the Philippines that was uniquely created to assist local governments and governance stakeholders through research, training, and consulting. We have an uninterrupted track record of 55 years since our establishment in 1965. And in the spirit of 21st century digital transformation, we are now online and bringing this roundtable to you. We are part of the steering committee for the SK Mandatory Training Program at the National Youth Commission. So CLRG is a constituent center of the UP National College of Public Administration and Governance, or UP-NCPAG, based in our sprawling Diliman campus in Quezon City. This morning, our director joins us, and she would like to say a few words before we begin our learning event. So friends, the director of CLRG, Professor Alice Celestine.
Paeng, Dean is here. Paeng, nandito si Dean, so I would give him the honor to do the message, yung opening remarks.
Yes, ma'am. Sige, ma'am.
Please
okay po. Fortunately, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Pasensya na po, Director Alice. Putol-putol po yung linya. Ngayon lang po nag-stabilize. Isang magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. On behalf of NCPAG and the Center for Local and Regional Governance and our distinguished guests, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar hosted by the CLRG. I would like to wish you and your families my personal best for your health and safety in these difficult times. I would also like to express my gratitude to the officers and staff of the CLRG for continuously sharing their research findings. The theme, the topic of today's webinar, Youth and Risky Behavior, is both relevant and timely. As we continue to suffer from the scourge of the COVID pandemic, numerous problems and issues, challenges concerning the youth have already arisen. Sa ating lahat, we will be challenged to our fullest. To our youth, an important thing to remember is to take care of yourself, adapt work-life balance, even when there are very great demands on your time. It is very important that you take away, to give your mind a rest and to restore energy. There will be times you will be involved in some completely heartbreaking experiences, but you will have to learn how to process these without shutting off your emotions or being overwhelmed by them. Marami tayong kakaharapin, lalo na kayong mga kabataan. Nakakahapon lamang po yung sa aming mga pag-uusap sa ibang aming kasamahan, napag-usapan po yung teenage pregnancy, yung mental depression and other illnesses being experienced by our youth. Certainly, kailangan pangalagaan kayo. We need to have physically, mentally, and morally healthy population for a healthy country. I encourage you to get involved, to participate and to take part in the many opportunities and initiatives hosted by our community. You should be central to everyone's mission since after all, kayong mga kabataan, ang ating kinabukasan at kami naman na matatanda na ang humuhubog ng inyong kinabukasan. Let us hope that you will be guided as you become the best version of yourself. As you live your life, I encourage you to go forth in a spirit of exploration and adventure. Provoke yourself to learn more, challenge yourself to excel, and feed your creativity. Take intellectual chances. It would be scary and thrilling. That is what is living our lives is all about. Make ourselves responsible citizens. I sincerely hope that what we learn here in this webinar will assist all of us, all of you, in realizing your dreams. Before concluding, allow me to thank all of you again for being here. Maraming salamat din po sa ating mga panelists. I trust that you will find your stay here to be a rewarding experience. Maraming salamat at magandang umaga ulit sa ating lahat.
Maraming salamat po kay Dean Dan Sagil of UPNCPAG. Good morning po, Dean. And again, good morning to everyone.
Good morning sa lahat.
For those of you just joining in, this is CLRG's webinar talk show on youth and risky behaviors. The topic may not be new, but the data may have changed over generation. This is also further contextualized within the Duterte administration's anti-drug abuse campaign, which is being implemented by our local governments. So let's look at our situationer. I'd like to direct your attention to our slide. So, well, we all know this, the Duterte administration's drug war has sort of targeted many of our youth who are involved in use and sometimes in trafficking of illegal drugs. There's also in a poll that in 2017 by the Philippine Daily Inquirer that young smokers are on the rise. And also in 2017, there was a Senate bill that was filed against underage drinking, responding to the perception that there is a widespread and prevalent underage drinking, which can lead to sexual and drug abuse and suicide among Philippine teenagers. When you receive the confirmation message for this learning event, you were directed to a link to a pre-webinar webinar video of Dr. Erwin Alampay, our previous director, who was our director when the project was active in 2019. Dr. Alampay was discussing parts of the findings of a larger study that CLRG conducted for the Makati City Anti-Drug Abuse Council for their arts-based anti-drug abuse program. We hope that all of you have watched that video, but to refresh our memory, here is a short summary of those findings.
So today, we're going to have a discussion on youth and risky behaviors. This is a presentation that came out of a study or an evaluation that we conducted for Makati. This is an age where we try to seek more of understanding ourselves and our identity. So this study, our objective was to actually look at what youth perception and exposures are to certain risk-taking behaviors, in particular smoking, drinking, and drug use. The project had multiple components, but for today, we're just going to talk about the survey results that we conducted from a sample of 1,000 students from the different schools in public schools in Makati from grades 7 to 12. also consistent with the literature, that there's 2 to 3%, a very small sample, who believe that there are no harmful effects as far as the use of drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes. There's a majority of them who recognize the risks are greater than the benefits. And interestingly, okay, the perception of risk increases as you go higher, from grade 7 to grade 10. Okay, but interestingly as well, in the higher grade levels, the benefits seem to be higher as well. 30% who believe that they are relaxants or that drugs can increase confidence is still a sizable percent. Mataas naman yung confidence ng mga students. Again, these are students or people in schools, that they can resist drugs and cigarettes and alcohol when they are offered. Confidence to resist is also dependent on who the peer or use it. Okay, so interestingly, it's harder to resist your best friend than your date. There's also a gender component to this. Women are more resolute in resisting offering of alcohol and cigarettes. In terms of exposure, 30% say they have friends who smoke. 60% who say they have friends who drink, and 4% who say they know people or friends who actually use drugs. So percentage with friends who are smokers or drinkers or drug users, they're higher than the percent who frequent with users and consume substances. We understand, of course, that during adolescence, it's normative that people start to try out some of these things. Okay, 33% or a third said they've tried smoking or drinking. More than half said they've never smoked or drank. Parents are more understanding with drinking. Yung perception nila na maraming nagyoyosi, maraming umiinom is not really correct. Okay, it's the same way na pag nanonood ka ng sine ng mga in movies, it appears that so many people are having sex or so many people are drinking or pero hindi naman totoo. They start to try at 14 to 16. I think even in my parents' time, yung tatay ko sabi niya 11 siya, kinundin siya nung barkada niya para mahingan siya ng yosi. That the problem of the youth is not exactly related to that, not exactly related to drugs or drinking. So there are many other things that are happening to them that are stressors. Lahat tayong dumaan sa adolescence, we recognize that this is a stage that we undergo or go through. Okay, whether it's experimentation, whether it's trying to do reckless behavior, provide support or scaffold support so that the kids are, even if they are exposed to these things surrounding us, are able to make better decisions. Just some findings namin, in terms of course, it's still related to the core, the problem of substance use and risk-taking behaviors. We also still have to stress perceived benefit, gender dimensions, and issues in terms of the age of drinking and onset of changes over time. We could look at program targeting or maybe siguro mode. And then we want to overlay the factors that could be decisive in identifying vulnerabilities. Ibig sabihin, ito yung sino ba yung mga highly exposed to drug use or to alcohol. So
Okay. So that was originally an 18-minute video and a summary of what we had at the pre-webinar video. So Dr. Alampay now joins us live from Quezon City. Tito Erwin, thank you for joining us today. Good morning po.
Good morning po. Akala ko po, kuya lang ang tawag sa akin dito. Hindi man ako
Ay,
ganun
Kuya
katanda.
Erwin. Good morning po, Kuya Erwin. Siguro po, my first question na lang to you, since you have discussed the findings. You mentioned that the youth of different generations more or less experience the same phase of experimentation and curiosity. However, do you think there are generational differences, say in patterns of substance use or abuse, since they say millennials and the Gen Z are perceived to be a more stressed generation?
When I say it's normative that youth undergo experimentation, of course, parang you go through life stages, and even the development of the brain is, of course, the same regardless of the generation. The only difference between other generations is, of course, the context. So it means the context of the kinds of access to, say, drugs or cigarette, or access to alcohol, and at the same time, we're in an environment na mas maraming, of course, we're embedded in social media, and in itself that also influences our perceptions. So that's the only thing. I think that's the thing that is different. When you say, are we more stressed? I think it's the question is parang, I don't know exactly if you're more stressed, but we have other stressors different from other generations. Kunyari, one interesting difference is that supposedly today the length by which we undergo adulthood is much parang stretch. Kumaga, dati a lot of people get married earlier. So if they get married earlier, iba yung stressors doon. And then yung ganong aspect, or looking for jobs. Ngayon, mas mahaba yung panahon na nag-aaral ka. So iba lang din yung stressors mo.
Okay, so I guess connected to that question, there's always this perception or perspective from older people that the succeeding generation are significantly worse than they are, or they would characterize them as reckless or irresponsible than their generation. Since the adolescent brain is, wired towards this risk-taking that you said, is the punitive approach to drug use making it a riskier act that may inadvertently make it more attractive? Jumping off from the saying na masarap ang bawal.
Yung hindi naman yung, I think my answer there is that the incentive to take risks is not connected to whether bawal sa or hindi. Okay? It's the same idea na gawin mo, kunyari, there are certain laws na sabihin, o kailangan i-judge na adult na yung bata. Kasi nakakaintindi naman na sila. So yung at least sinasabi ng mga psychologists, I'm not a psychologist myself, but my wife is one, is that even if the youth or adolescents know what is right, it doesn't necessarily mean they can make a correct decision. Okay? And that's part of that idea of risk-taking din, and of that life stage. So hindi sa gawin mong bawal, mas gagawin nila. Hindi ganun yung ibig sabihin nung ano. So it doesn't mean na gawin mong bawal, it incentivizes. It just says that even if you know that merong mga penalties yan, pag minsan kasama mo yung mga kabarkada mo, even though alam mong masama, it doesn't mean you will make the right decision. So it's not connected to the punitive aspect of the law. It just says that kung at that stage we really make bad decisions, regardless of how smart we are or what we know.
Opo. So given this stage in their lives, compared siguro to the older generations, since we are at the information age where information can be gathered much more easily than before, sabi nga nila, even you can even look for terrorism videos online. And with that, does having all sorts of information and even about these risky behaviors online, making it sort of easier for them to ponder these risky behaviors and risk taking them.
I think there's another, not exactly necessarily related to the issue. Okay, the idea that there's so much information online, because of course uh we know that sometimes even the same topic you could find good and bad information. As far as teaching the youth to actually behave online and to access what is right and what is uh, and avoid what is fake. I think that's another kind of intervention altogether. Okay, parang online citizenship, online parang teaching people to know what to believe in is something that I think we have to teach this generation, because hindi mo naman magagabayan yan all the time eh. Parang they would search for things, and then I think part of the challenge is how to help them find the right or the good sources of information.
Sabi nyo nga kanina, sir, it's harder to resist your best friend over the person you're dating. Um, Speaking of genders and how strong are your findings on gender differentials? Given the more liberal perspectives that we now have compared to before, isn't the gap on, say, reported behavior or resistance levels narrowing between girls and boys?
Actually, the findings are consistent with what the literature says. That in reality, boys or men are more risk takers than women. Okay, like I seem to recall when asked about suicide ideation. Okay, there are more women who might have thought about it, but more men actually attempt. Okay, and the same way na with other, like whether it's drugs or parang the statistics naman show that more men are likely to try than women. So in that respect, consistent man yun. And hindi naman natin habol to bridge that gap, di ba? Parang I don't know, but there are gender differences inherent.
So this is one thing that narrowing the gender gap would not be advocated for. So my final question siguro at this portion, sir. This may be a far pitch, but you have not covered sexual behavior in your study, but early sexual debut is considered a risky behavior too. And in the recent SK mandatory pilot courses that CLRG ran, this was also mentioned by SK officials as a common problem. A recent UP Population Institute study said that there are 18,000 more teenage pregnancies this year as an indirect effect of the pandemic, so the lockdown. So compared to 2019, so can you make any connections with the risk-taking behaviors in substances as subjected to your study?
I'm not sure about the stats whether it was during the pandemic, pero because I seem to recall it was a 2019 study, so I don't think it's. I might be mistaken, but I don't think that's connected to the pandemic. But the idea that they get pregnant, more adolescents are getting pregnant. I think it's not necessarily generational. I think part of the explanation there could also be the fact that in the last couple of years, access to reproductive health services has also declined. I think that's something worth investigating. That 10-year-olds and up to 15-year-olds are getting pregnant, I think it's not just a problem of the youth per se, but rather also the adults who got them pregnant or something. Okay, so we cannot wholly attribute that to the behavior of the youth. I think it's also something to think about in terms of the behavior of the adults around them.
Okay, we'll leave it there for the moment, Kuya Erwin. He will be back during the open forum. We've been talking about this as a project that was commissioned by the Makati City government, and I think it's good that we hear from the project director of Pag-asa sa Makati, which is the Makati's anti-drug abuse program that is school-based. And joining us from uh, Davao City is Miss Mady Lim. Uh, you've seen her credentials before. She's been involved with UNICEF, the Conrad Adenauer School for Young Politicians, and as well as UP Mindanao. So thank you for your time, Ate Mady. Maayong
Yes,
buntag.
hi. Maayong buntag sa tanan from Davao City. Ang galing nung conversation with Kuya Erwin. Maraming salamat for letting me be part of this talk show. First time ko to, but I'm really enjoying it. So, yes, Kuya Paeng.
Sige po.
Um,
My first question siguro po, Ate Mady, is that the study was headed by Dr. Alampay as an independent assessment of the program that you're heading. But let's discuss first the findings in the video. Since you were the one directly involved in the project, where you have interaction directly with the participants, were there parts of the survey findings that you agree with or disagree with, or would you like to add more insights on some of those findings?
Right. Okay. So I'll focus on what was presented na very simplified and very useful. So with reference to the findings na i-present for this event, I'll focus on the top 4 issues faced by the surveyed youth. Sinabi doon, yun ay ang physical appearance, grades, family problems, and finances. So when I read this, I thought to myself, so this is how our kids express themselves given limited words. Tapos biglang napahiling ako, sabi ko sa sarili ko, sana mapag-aralan din natin how students meant by that. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Bakit ganun ang kanilang sagot base sa kanilang social and cultural context? So, bakit physical appearance? Bakit grades? Bakit family problems? At bakit finances? Bakit ang mga ito ang naging trending na issue sa mga kabataan na nasa Makati? So, I say this kasi in the 3 years that we've been doing the program at sa pag-uusap sa mga bata na nandoon sa same na community, we were able to gather a large number of anecdotal evidence na nagbibigay ng bakit tungkol dun sa kanilang issues and problems. So, for example, in the individual level, the youth can cite a lot of issues. But if you dig deeper, ang bottom line ng kanilang mga issue ay tiwala sa sarili, halaga ng sarili, and sense of belongingness. So, we can say that the matter about physical appearance and grades are just the tangible manifestation ng mga deeper issues na ito. In the group level naman, kapag sinabing family problem, ang usual set of concerns nila ay masasamang bisyo, pangangabit ng magulang, panggugulpe, at kakulangan ng pera. So, ang mga concerns na to, they actually mix and match to create a compounding problem for these young people in Makati. Ibig sabihin, the phrase family problem for them when they answer that is highly toxic kasi their primary source of care and support is failing. So, ang mga ganitong explanation, we would want them to surface. And gusto natin, boses ng maraming kabataan mismo ang magkwento ng mga ito. If we can do this, naniniwala ako na we can better understand the youth that we are targeting in our programs.
Yes, ma'am. I've also visited one school with in the process of this study, and mukha ngang marami yung connections, yung problems nila with self-confidence and with connecting with their peers. And may mga nagsasabi that this generations, the younger generations today, while they seem to be highly interactive online, they tend to be more isolated in that sense. So how were you able to see that in the participants that you took into Pag-asa sa Makati, and how did the program sort of bridge those gaps that they saw in their lives?
Well, sa programa kasi, the program is really just information, education, communications na campaign against illegal drugs. But we want to do it differently. So sa programa, maraming activities kung saan the young people that we have with us engage and immerse themselves in a series of sessions na kasama ang mga adult na collaborators. And they talk about these things and they do it creatively in different art forms kung pwede. So, for example, sa kwentuhan kung saan sinabing, ano-ano ang mga issue ng inyong community, ang daming pwedeng lumabas na sagot. And because we give them a lot of time to discuss and wala namang limit dun sa kung paano nila i-express ang sarili nila. So, malaya nilang na ipahayag ang kanilang mga pananaw, lalong-lalo na ang kanilang mga kwento. And the thing about the program, since parati namin siyang nire-review at inaaral kung anong mga emerging patterns, yun yung napansin namin na so this is not just unique to one year, or this is not just unique to one group. May pattern, and we want na kahit papano, even if IEC campaign ang programa, we can be able to connect them to other programs and services na relevant na makakasagot doon sa iba pa nilang pangangailangan.
Ate Mady, some people will say na, well, Makati naman to. Makati can afford to, say, roll out this program sa lahat ng mga schools nila because of their resources. But from your perspective, do you have any recommendations on how other LGUs or Sangguniang Kabataan could design programs for their youth that may be similar to yours?
Okay. Very good point about citing na Makati naman to. They have resources, yung mga ganun-ganun. Definitely, nandun yung advantage na yon. So, dun sa tanong na yon, let me give you instead 5 good practices na ginagawa namin sa programa, but hindi lang nga sa programa, because globally, organizations na seryoso in working for and working with young people apply these 5 practices. So, kung nagde-design ka ng programa para sa kabataan, gusto mong consistent ka sa application mong ito. So, ano-ano yung mga good practices na yon? It's listen, validate, authorize, act, as in ACT, and the last one must always go together. At yan ay reflect and revise. So, isa-isahin natin. Listen. Pag nagde-design tayo ng programa, let's listen to the young people na target ng program natin. Let them educate us about the situation, and para malaman natin mismo sa kanila, galing sa kanila, anong mga hiling nila sa mga duty bearers katulad natin. But also, what can they do as young people? Because we cannot just treat them as beneficiaries. We want them to be collaborators sa programa natin. Now, if you already have the design and inaayos mo na, fina-finalize mo na yung program mo, gusto mo, bago mo ma-finalize, you validate it with them. So, get their feedback. Yun yung ibig sabihin ng second na good practice, validate. Yung third good practice would be authorize. Let them exercise responsibility to the cause. Build their capacity, and then give them roles sa programa na akma naman sa kanilang kapasidad at competence. You would want it na in the learning and growth ng batang sinama mo sa programa, nandoon ang isang adult na collaborator na mag-guide at magsusupport sa kanila. Now, the other practice is ACT. The ACT, ACT. Let youth and adult collaborators work together, hindi lamang dun sa part na tinitrain mo sila. You want them in all activities na nag-work together, nagko-collaborate. And you want these activities to be meaningful, may halaga sa individual na collaborator, may personal meaning, purposeful. Makikita niya na nakaka-contribute to sa lipunan at maganda ang contribution niya. And powerful because it can move not just them but also other people, and now that makes a community moving together for a particular cause. So the last one na sinasabi nating must always go together is reflect and revise. Programs kasi are a work in progress. For me, it can never be perfect, but you can aim for excellence. So you need to regularly review them to make them better. Let me give you now an example, no? For reflect and revise sa konteksto ng programa. In Pag-asa sa Makati, we engage our youth collaborators in mid-phase review or year-end review. So review sa kalagitnaan and review pagkatapos ng implementation year. So to do this, gumagamit kami ng surveys para sa mga individual participation nila. And we invite representatives among the young people in the program to join the FGTs kung saan nandun yung mga adult collaborators nila. Now, we use these findings para mag-guide yung changes na gagawin natin for the targets, the guidelines, the modules, at mga monitoring tools for the next year. So that's how it works in terms of Pag-asa sa Makati. So ulitin natin. Listen. Anong sunod? Validate. Authorize. Yes. Late ka. Authorize. Act. And the last one na must always go together ay? The last one that must always go together ay? Reflect and revise. Okay? So, for the youth-led organizations like the SK, kasi marami sila sa audience natin and masaya ako na marami sila. The invitation for you guys is to work with adults in all of those good practices, all of those good 5 practices. Kasi the model na gusto nyong i-promote is youth-initiated na project and adults are supporting roles. Or youth-initiated projects and decision-making is shared with adults if you are collaborating with other offices. So, to close, maraming benefits when youth and adults work together, and that's why ganun yung naging design sa programa ng Pag-asa sa Makati. So, always we remind our community of collaborators. Magtulungan tayo, wag tayong magkanya-kanya. And let's be consistent with the practice na pinopromote natin sa programa. Yun lang, Kuya Paeng.
Thank you for underlining that, Ate Maidi. Thank you for underlining that or emphasizing that point that the SK, in spite of the fact that it has been emphasized that they have autonomy from the barangay, that they should be always working with the adults. And in our trainings, we say that, don't view yourself as an island, that you're independent from the adults in the rest of the local government. I only have about 2 minutes left. And my last question to you at this portion is, you've been running this program as a community and school-based arts intervention program for the youth within the context of an anti-drug abuse campaign. So why art? How does such a program concretely address the possible substance use or abuse problems among at least the in-school youth?
Good question.
And how about the out-of-school youth?
Okay. Papasadahan ko ang dalawang grupong yan. So, bakit arts? Kasi arts as a tool for personal and community development is very powerful. So para sa pag-asa sa Makati, na ang nature ay information, education, and communication campaign against illegal drugs, strategic ang application ng arts in preparing the group na mangangampanya and connecting them to the wider public. For example, sa pag-asa sa Makati, individuals and small groups can use different art forms and produce meaningful outputs para sa campaign. And those outputs can be shared kahit wala sila mismo doon sa venue. Focusing on how the outputs are used, yung mga artistic na mga outputs na to, it can actually unite larger populations to promote the positive message kahit hindi sila yung immediate na kasama natin sa program. How do they do this? Well, in Makati, they can dance dun sa program na dance ng pag-asa sa Makati. They can also do community singing, like yung mga narinig ninyo na kanta, they can sing that together. And or they can share in building community murals to spread the words or the message na kaya ko to ng walang droga. Yung ganon. Sometimes meron ding mga activities kung saan yung mga artistic na mga outputs can trigger reflections kasi ine-encourage niya yung conversations dun sa mga participants. For example, yung mga drama, interactive dapat siya kasi. So, pwedeng hingin kung ano yung reaksyon o pananaw ng mga nakatingin na magulang or ng mga bisitang inimbitahan na kasama sa rehabilitation program ng MADA, yung mga ganon. Or sometimes there can also be conversations sa panonood ng mga films kasi it's one of the outputs din ng mga bata. They make films about their kwento about illegal drugs. So, kahit na walang live activities, basta nandun yung mga artistic and very interesting and meaningful na mga outputs, you're able to get the attention and interest of your public. So, it can be shared beyond Makati. Pero, I must flag na the arts is a very powerful tool, pero to serve its purpose, kailangan ng tamang mga tao sa programa who can consistently apply the PSM or pag-asa sa Makati methodology for engaging young people and the community. So hindi enough that you're using arts and you're being very creative. You need to have the right people making sure na ginagamit nyo yung methodology na nais ninyo para sa programa.
Okay. So siguro pa my last addition na lang siguro is a perspective that I got from two of the students that I interviewed, and they said that hindi daw sila magaling sa sports pero at least sa art nakakapag-participate sila.
Galing. I'm glad na ganun ang kanilang naramdaman.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you, Ate Mady. Please hold on to your questions for her. She'll be back during the open forum. Maraming salamat po. From local, let's go to national. The national agency in charge of the National Government Program for Youth in Nation Building is the National Youth Commission. And today it is being represented by our good friend, Mr. Mel Santella, who is the Regional Youth Development Head of the Regional Youth Development Division. He is in charge of the SK Mandatory and Continuing Training Program Modules Development. He is also in charge of the development of the SK Web Portal and the development of the Competency-Based Human Resource Management Framework for SK's local youth development officers, as well as his colleagues at the National Youth Commission. Magandang umaga po, Tito Mel. Tito Mel ba? Kuya Mel na rin lang.
Yeah.
Kuya Mel. Good morning.
Magandang umaga po. Okay. I just shared the age level of our good friend, Erwin, Professor Erwin Alampay. Let
Sige
her be
po.
called me Kuya pa rin. Sige. Thank you very
Sige
much
po,
for
Kuya Mel.
inviting us. Thank you for sharing, enabling us to share also. And I find the topic very interesting. Actually, it's consistent with the study of the study that was made with the Philippine Youth Development Plan. And as you know, that's our banner advocacy, is the Philippine Youth Development Plan. Now, there was a lot of questions or maybe suggestions coming from the academy. We really appreciate all these things and what are supposed to be done. In the Philippine Youth Development Plan, um, we found out that this is also part of the risk behavior. Top of the line is, of course, the reproductive health. And we cannot just um, parang baliwala natin yung mga risk behavior natin. At nabanggit nga doon sa pag-aaral, kasama nga yung drinking, smoking, and everything. So, ano bang plano? Ano bang sinasuggest ng Philippine Youth Development Plan? At ito nga ay isang magandang na mawasan natin siya. Hindi naman natin sabihin natin pwedeng i-eradicate kagad lahat yan kasi yan nga ang nakagagawian or part of the adolescent journey to adulthood. No? So, but we want to decrease also yung smoking, which is very harmful to the health, and also drinking, which is very harmful to the health. So, in the Philippine Development Plan, kasi meron yung mga center of participation, and one of those is health. And looking at our participants, nandito yung mga SK, mga what we call our stakeholders, and we call them soon to be, or maybe pwede natin silang itag na mga youth development workers na institutionalized na siya, di ba? And we look forward on this. Ito nga yung mga 9 centers na yan na sinasabi natin. And we're really looking forward for to generate more participation. Na-identify na natin siya sa Philippine Development Plan. And I think one of our panelists from Makati is also encouraging a lot of participation. Now, focusing on this is we look forward on the health issues. Good thing na naipakita yung slide na to. Can we go on the next slide, please? So, the next slide, nalilink naman tayo dun sa paano ba gagawin to? Ano nga ba halaga ng Philippine Development Plan? In the meantime, that we have all, as I was saying, the Philippine Development Plan is already a plan that has been made based on the assessment, and we have a lot of SKs now participating with us, and it's good to know about this, and again, to refresh their memories kasi this is the time that they are about to come up with their comprehensive barangay development plan, okay? And also the annual barangay development plan. So, to focus on this, paano ba natin siya makakatulong doon to address the problem nga naman ganito. It's not really a problem per se na again, ito yung PYD agenda statement on health. So, we want them to participate at nakalagay nga rito na dapat multi-sectoral. And I think that is also consistent with the suggestions nga. Kailangan may collaboration. And we want to promote health and well-being. Address the sexual and non-sexual risk-taking behaviors. So it's already being promoted, and hopefully this will be a reference naman din ng mga SKs natin in crafting their their annual barangay development plan or comprehensive barangay development plan. So the decision is really for them depending on their situation. So because of their financial independence, they can also provide the budget for that activity. But we know naman na hindi naman lahat ay sufficient yung funds. So we're really banking on their resourcefulness as a leader and also collaboration with other government agencies. In the national level, we are collaborating with the Dangerous Drug Board, and they have a lot of programs like Bantay Bata, and also this awareness program about drugs and how to prevent all these things. That is very important to the young people to know. So this is one way where we can institutionalize kasi meron naman institutions na mga SKs, and perhaps they can always refer to the PYDP as we are recommending them to look into it because there are already good practices that they can call out from that plan and just to be more creative on how they will implement it. It's very important for them to get this data and this information so they can also be aware on how they will localize it in a way na maintindihan din naman ng mga kabataan nila, ng mga constituents nila on how to really decrease the smoking and also the drinking among young people in the community. Okay? So ito yung isa.
Sir Mel,
This is the strategy na you mentioned. Yes po.
let me interrupt you there for a second. I would just like you to sort of clarify. In the PYDP, the most of the risk-taking behaviors are subsumed under the heading of health strategy. So that would also include drugs as part of a health intervention. Just to clarify it with the S case that just like what Dr. Alampay said, that it's not really about the laws that make it tempting, is that it is in fact a health concern.
Yes, agree. It is. It's part of the health concerns of young people.
Yes, sir. So I would like to ask you to sort of continue with the framework on the programs and services for the S case and how programs like this will fit into their planning.
Yes. Well, again, as I mentioned kanina, this is the time that they're coming up with the plans, and they need also to, as suggested by the National Commission, to look into the Philippine Youth Development Plan. So there are some recommendations for them if they would like to adapt it or maybe get other best practices from other institutions, just like what we did. And we're partnering also with other academies. But as of now, member ng steering committee ang NCPAG and CLRG. And it's really very helpful for us to really propagate naman itong mga Philippine Youth Development Plan. So, hindi na mahihirapan yung SKs natin, mga SK officials, to call out nga that this information. And the next important thing about it is they're already proposing putting it in documents and seeking the approval, but they can also provide funds for such activity. They are given such authority already. And as mentioned, there is also a need to collaborate. This is not only the job of the SKs, but the skills of collaborating it with other stakeholders in the community is really very important to sustain it. Yun naman din ang importante. Kaya yun nga yun lagi nating ina-advocate na dapat ay mapalaganap natin na this will be a successful projects, programs, sustainable because there's also a fund allocated for it, and there will always be a part na ina-evaluate siya, minomonitor natin siya how successful it is. So we'll be able to monitor nationwide whether there is really a decrease in smoking and also in drinking naman ng mga kabataan natin. That would be a good evaluation na makikita natin in the near future also.
Okay, Sir Mel, there's just a chat from one of our participants that I think would be a good follow-up to your thoughts, because you are now you are the ones who are with the national government, and in as far as Pag-asa sa Makati is concerned, they are cooperating with the DepEd, which is also a national agency, and in that sense you're on the same level with the DepEd. And Owen Lava, who is an SK official from Quezon City, is asking why not integrate the SDG, this sort of risk-taking behavior education and the SDGs in the curriculum, so that it will, which is managed by the DepEd, which we can have a much more defined youth development instead of just asking the SK to do all the job for youth development. Has there been any initiative between NYCDILG with the DepEd concerning that?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And it brings to my mind that we are part of the technical working group with CHED actually, and on the NSTP, it has to be modified because they also need to develop it more now this time, and because there is also the component na yung mga SKs natin on schools. So part of it, part of the NSTP, actually sa CWC, ito yung mga subject matter na kailangan pagtuunan din. Kasi on school, paano nga naman maibobot ng SK who's also enrolled in schools na kailangan na ma-model niya na mayroong mga ginagawa sa NSTP. And that's one thing that naka-integrate sa curriculum nila. And I think CHED and also the DepEd is also part of it na kailangan din magkaroon ng community immersions. And it's a good experience that the SKs will be able to share being their role models as an SK youth leaders in the community.
Yeah, ang ano lang sir, 'di ba, we sit together at the steering committee, but Chet is there but DepEd is not there. And learning from this research that we had from in Makati, they had their own challenges with coordinating with Chet, with DepEd. And sort of DepEd is still operating within this silo, and in spite of the fact that this is a city government project, it actually varies from school to school in terms of the engagement, and that could be symptomatic of something that there is a lack of a framework where DepEd should be much more integrated into the local programs instead of operating just as a silo. I mean, I don't expect you to comment in behalf of DepEd, but since you're sort of operating at the national level and thinking of interagency cooperation at this point. Sir Mel?
Yes, I'm back. I agree on that. Remember, we're on the national level, and we have this sector na child youth, which is 15 below 17 and 15, core youth, which is 18 and 24, and adult youth. So with DepEd, definitely that's below 15 pa and everything. So I think there is also an effort between us, not the steering committee, but with DepEd, kasi part of it is really within our boundary, like terms ng 15 to 30 years old ang clientele namin. So I agree on that, na dapat nga meron din ganong coordination, but at the moment we're doing it bilateral, no? And we would be looking forward to a policy na paano nga ma-integrate to. But we are part of the technical working group, and we're often being invited by DepEd to make up certain policies on certain issues. We will always advocate the Philippine development, especially on health and education, and this is part of our mandate.
Another follow-up question, sir, but again, the follow-up questions are being asked by the participants and not me. So here is a comment from Ray Mel, o kutukayo mo pa, Resposo, Youth Development Officer ng Provincial LGU Isabela. His comment says, sana lang mas extensive ang campaign information sa mga SK and the youth na gamitin na galing sa PYDP. This should really be their Bible. Hindi po kasi talaga umaabot sa grassroots. If meron man, parang it only scratches the surface. So in effect, marami sa mga SKs natin ang di makagawa ng kanilang mga plans. Your reaction?
Agree. Actually, Actually, we are conducting mapping nga. Tinatanong na nga namin, in-scan na namin, at we're coming up with the mapping. Ilan na nga ba mga SKs na may mga PYDP? And we're having a benchmarking already. Totoo yun. And then if you go back to the history nga, it's only last year, we are still on the birth pains of really operationalizing all these SK programs. At madami naman kami nagawa na for 2019 na accomplished, but these are the pillars and foundations pa lang. Unang-una yung access nila sa funds and all these things, financial management and everything. And partly, yun nga ang gusto natin gawin sana na i-promote ang PYDP, and we are now really beefing up the technical assistance na paano namin may assisto yung comprehensive barangay development plan. Recently, I think it was only yesterday, we had this talk with the local government academy, and they are also looking forward na sana ma-cascade down the level on providing the assistance in how do you come up with the comprehensive barangay youth development plan. So it's really a skill. But we have yet to overcome these challenges natin as a pandemic tayo, and it's really very hard na paano gagawin nyo. So we really keep banking also on our partners, the CLRG, the NCPAG, kasi yung mga modules na ginagawa nga natin, okay na yung pilot natin ng mga face-to-face but here comes the pandemic. We are also challenged ito na mag-webinar tayo, and really we're doing our best also as the NCPAG is also doing their best to educate, to send this information. But let us be diligent and be patient. We can overcome this together, and hopefully we can saturate also the SKs who's needing a technical assistance in coming up with planning, specifically on certain areas that is prevailing in the community. Kasi sila naman magpa-prioritize. This is only one, and I think they also need to prioritize what activities they are going to conduct, especially in the areas.
Okay, thank you for that, Kuya Mel. At this point, I would like Kuya Erwin and Ate Maydi to join Kuya Mel and I. Before we proceed to the open forum, I guess this would be a question to the entire panel. Because this is with regard to mental health, because we've been discussing the implications of the pandemic, and there were already articles about the next pandemic would be mental health because of the prolonged lockdowns and the disconnection with either family or friends, that we might be facing a mental health pandemic after COVID. And since the issue of mental health is finally being recognized by society, do LGUs have a role to play in addressing the issue, say specifically for the youth sector? Ate Maydi and I sort of mentioned this a while ago in our discussion. I'm curious to your thoughts on how can local governments address this mental health problem that seems to be imminent. Sir Mel?
Yes, thank you for the questions. Actually, we're partnering with one of the NGOs, and Rescue Kabataan is also providing such services. We're coming up with webinars to come up with TikTok, and so far they are successful, gaining a lot of grounds in encouraging a lot of young people. And then also we have this program with former participants namin na we want them to be trained to be competent in psychosocial counseling, but it's really a very hard job right now because very few counselors are competent in doing such skills or services. So more importantly, madami nga nang napapaning because of this dahil nasa bahay lang. Ano pa ba i-recommend nga natin? So with DILG, so far, ang ginagawa namin is for them to engage yung PIDA kontra kailangan ng disiplina. So this thing is an outlet for young people, especially the ASK City, to help naman din in controlling the spread of the virus. At least it's a means of sharing also their skills and also encouraging their youth to really be disciplined so we can reduce the effect of the virus. This is something I think for the psychologists to say na it's a good outlet for them to really be healthy also. Nutrition is part of it. Actually, yun nga rin ang isang nakikita ko. In my family, my children is always involved in the computer. What can you do? They have nothing to do, but they cannot get out of the house. So we have really to put some control in the exposure of the computer. But there are a lot of things that is being offered, like the Department of Agriculture is saying, oh, magtanim ka muna for rural areas and with all these things, and then talk to your friends, di ba? Yung mga ganon, share your Bibles and all these things. It will help. But I guess the NYC cannot just do it alone. And we need a lot of stakeholders also, especially in the academe. Lalo na mag-o-open ng school ngayon. So, yun pang isang assistance na kailangan natin. Together, we can perhaps overcome this problem in the mental health. And I agree. It's really increasing based on our reports, based on our study, na talagang nag-i-increase din siya. Kaya nga kailangan din i-prioritize.
Okay, speaking of stakeholder engagement, Ate Maybe, what are your thoughts about the LGU's role with regard to mental health, addressing mental health problems among the youth? I mean, aside from pag-asa.
Ayan, okay. Napaisip ako ng todo dun sa tanong na yun. Kasi we wouldn't want the different units ng local government na to act separately. I can imagine na at this point, even if ganito yung sitwasyon na naka-stay at home ang marami, ang dami na din nilang napag-usapan tungkol sa kung anong pwede. So it would be good kung magkakaroon ng venue kung saan yung mga different LGUs will be able to discuss and share kung ano-ano yun. But sa level ng kabataan kasi, para sa akin, kung mental health ang pag-uusapan, nakakatulong na may ginagawa sila sa kanilang sariling bakuran, sa kanilang harap ng computer. Pero very important ang face-to-face na interaction eh. So sana, regardless kung anong level ng LGU ka, pagkatapos ninyong mag-share, pagkatapos ninyong mag-agree na ito pala yung mga pwedeng gawin to address mental health na problems ng kabataan at ng mga nakakatanda, nandun yung posibilidad na let's allow for small group na face-to-face interactions. Kasi for example, in Davao City, klaro sa amin dito, sa LGU namin, ang communication na we can convene. Basta below 25 ang number ng mga tao sa grupong yon. And base sa practice ko, 25 is already a very good number for a small group of people to be supporting each other. In fact, hindi mo nga kailangan maging psychologist para makatulong dun sa mental health na problema. Nandun ka lang, be there. Kausapin mo ang mga kapwa mo na pareho kayo ng pinagdadaanan. It can be as simple as that. And you can start that habang hinihintay natin na mas makabuo ng solid na programa ang ating gobyerno.
Okay. Any thoughts, Dr. Lampay?
Yung naisip ko lang in relation to that is may IATF guidelines na bawal pa rin lumabas ang 60 and above and 20 and below. Ang hindi ko lang maintindihan is what's the science behind that 20 and below.
Okay.
And at the very least, I think LGU should be asking, is there a way for us to be able to provide regulations such that children could go to open spaces man lang, makalabas sila ng bahay in a safe manner.
Opo.
Hindi, sa akin, hindi pwedeng, ito na naman yung mga punitive rules natin na either pwede or hindi pwede. I think part of the mental health problem is the very nature that we need to go out, di ba? We need to have sun. We need to be able to play. And we could do that naman. I think we could find a way to do that safely. We could, kung kailangan ng schedule or something. At the very, ayun yung una ko naisip, that we should investigate this guideline. What's the logic? Sabihin nga nila, yung mas bata nga, hindi sila nagkakasakit as much. Okay, that's one. The other is, of course, pwede mo naman sila samahan, di ba? At the very least, pwede kung may kasama na adult, di ba? Pero it's vague for me how that rule is implemented, and I think that would be helpful a lot. The other thing I wanted to say, and I think this is not directly related, but the fact that they are staying at home also increases their exposure to other vulnerabilities. Kasi pag minsan the school is their safe zone, their barkada is their safe zone, and sometimes it's the family yung may mga issues sila. So we also have to be careful about that. So yung interventions natin should also be interventions for the family, interventions for the parents, kung sakali, kung hindi mo sila matanggal dun sa family setting. So yung pag-asa sa Makati, the intervention is based in schools, and in pandemics like this, when we stay at home, hindi natin magagawa yung klaseng intervention. So that's something we also have to think about. Ano ba yung mga institutions where the interventions can happen? And I think one of that would be families and parenting strategies. Kasi minsan, yung ibang parents dyan, hindi sanay na nakikita sila sa mga anak nila ng ganito kadalas. And sometimes that's also attention. Lalo na pag nag-homeschooling, tapos yung parents yung na-expect mo tutulong. I anticipate that's also a problem that is worth thinking about.
Salamat po, Kuya Erwin. I suddenly remembered my conversation with a kid, and the teacher said that for him, the school was his safe place. And since now the schools are locked down, he couldn't go. So may pagkakataon daw po na nag-away yata yung nanay tsaka yung bata. Lumabas siya, biglang nag-worry yung nanay. Baka daw kung saan na barkada na. Pero yung pala yung bata went to the Pag-asa sa Makati program. And so, parang sabi ko, at least meron siya pupuntahan. Pero ngayon kasi, wala yung in-school program. And having the kids at home is giving rise to other tensions within the family. Na sabi nga ni Dr. Alampay, di naman sana yung mga parents that the kids are always at home. So at least they are able to sort of relieve some of those tensions while the kids are away. So I guess my next question will be from, again, our audience na po. And if any of the audience would like to ask a question on camera, just raise your hands. We still have about 10 minutes for our open forum. But let me ask the panel this question. This is from Ms. Precious Manuel, SK Federation President, who is an ex-officio member of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan of Bataan. So board member, Manuel. And she says, what can be the biggest role of the local government to eliminate the selling of cigarettes around their localities? Since cigarettes and even alcohol are still considered legal substances, and siguro from the point of view of regulation, what can LGU specifically do with regard to, sabi niya kasi eliminate the selling of cigarettes? So who would like to answer that question po? Sir Mel, from a more national perspective muna.
Yes. We cannot totally eradicate it, but we can lessen and mitigate it. The other one is really encouraging our young people to practice healthy lifestyle. That will definitely reduce the involvement or taking the substance, because you need to be healthy. And one thing that is also recommended is get into sports, because your stamina and your health will not be improving in a competitive level if you're really taking this substance. So I guess there are alternative way of enjoying life and coming up with a healthy lifestyle. Um, Lessening it is a part of our mandate or maybe our advocacy. It will also be a part na kailangan natin i-accept that this is part of socialization. But we can always say no, we don't want to drink, or maybe say no also if you don't want to smoke. Kasi nandiyan na naman yung batas na get out of my space. If you want to smoke, go to your space. All these things are already in there. Discipline is needed. But I think it's really in the person himself to practice lifestyle and a good lifestyle, and gauge from himself where he can be happy and have a good living lifestyle. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Ate Maydi, any thoughts? How can LGUs help in lessening selling of cigarettes? Ate Maydi, you have any thoughts?
Okay, sorry. Yan, nawala ako. Um, iniisip ko, so there's that expectation. Ah, I agree dun sa mga ni-raise kanina ni Kuya Mel. I- ayoko nang ayoko nang magdagdag kasi naniniwala ko na nandoon na naman. There are systems in place already, and hindi naman natin mapepwersa ang mga tao. So it all boils down to the individual, kung anong pipiliin niya. Hindi naman tayo nagkulang sa education sa schools. May mga content naman tungkol dito. Outside of schools, si barangay may ganun din. Meron din silang mga campaigns na sinasabi kung paano tayo maaapektuhan ng paggamit ng mga ganyang mga substances. So, perhaps if anything, nandoon siya ngayon sa consistency ng implementation ng LGU. Kasi minsan, eto ngayon, may ginawa kang programa, and then you're saying na, oh, we're gonna strengthen the campaign for this. Yeah? It's strong for 2 months, 3 months. Pagkatapos nun, biglang naglaylo na. So, nagiging complacent na rin ang mga tao. And because of that, hindi nagiging permanente yung behavior change sa individual na level. So consistency sa LGUs.
Okay, Dr. Lampay, Kuya Erwin.
Well, unang-una, I think we have to remember that in the past, we have been successful in actually reducing the use, the smoking behavior. I remember when I was in college, our professors were smoking in class, even in NCPAD. And now, mapapagsabihan mo pa yung professor ngayon. Dati, papahiyain ka pa ng professor mo. And I remember, even in grad school, ganun nga. And one of the siguro more successful campaigns was the Yossi Kadiri campaign of the DOH. So it starts from the top, but it's not impossible. I think compared to my generation and my parents' generation, I think the youth today are actually smoking less. What can the LGUs do? I think it's just also a matter of, aside from, feeling ko, sa totoo lang, we've focused less on smoking and drinking and focused so much on drugs, especially in this administration. When smoking is itself also a very more harmful one, especially in terms of how many people are actually are smoking. So things that you could do is make it more expensive, more difficult for the youth to get access to it. Pagbawal mo yung tingi-tingi na pagbenta, pagbawal mo yung oras in which you could buy these things, require IDs if you want, parang ganon. Just making it more difficult to buy and making it more difficult to smoke anywhere, diba? You have to have spaces. Just the hassle of it, I think would be helpful. But I think it's something that we've done successfully in the past, and we've, I think, changed behaviors in the past, and I think that's a very doable thing to address.
Okay, I remember a participant who came to the Philippines who I met in an international conference, and he was saying that it's so hard to smoke in the Philippines already because of the reduction of the places where you can actually smoke. And one participant was asking, do they also shoot smokers? He kidded it that way. So the participant said that, oh, they don't shoot smokers yet. But sabi nga ni Dr. Alampay, we have made significant inroads in trying to make it more difficult, I mean, for the general population to access cigarettes. And may tanong po dito about the sin tax law and how effective that has been. And I suppose this is a question to Sir Mel, who's also who may actually have some insights about the implementation of the sin tax law and how that has helped in at least affecting the supply. Has it affected the supply or has it affected the demand?
Yes, with the recent passes, especially on the sin tax, it's really hard and very prohibitive na bumili ng sigarilyo ngayon. Pero how creative is the Filipino, may tingi-tingi pa rin naman. Pero yung alak, yung mga alak naman, hindi na pwedeng tingi-tingi na yon. Kailangan bote-bote na yun. Mahal na rin siya. So, lesson na rin ang nakakabili nun unless you really have some excess money. And you can only drink so much now this time around. Tapos, because of this COVID, lalo pang nawala yung mga drinking beach at saka wala na rin yung mga bar and grills. So, it helps. Actually, this is a good realization na we now need to take care of our health because it also brings an opportunity to reflect na hindi naman din tama lang ngayon, we have to strengthen our immunities and all these things for young people, especially the young people. But the disadvantage or the downside of it is they are now resorting to eating a lot of junk foods, sleeping on the wrong manner na change na yung time behavior nila. As a they cannot join already in the regular meal kasi they have different time. So we also need to adapt siguro system on that. But definitely, going to our topic, it really helps us. It really helps us this situation right now to reduce it. But how to sustain it in the long run? There must be also a part on us as enablers to provide a good information and what are the bad effects of this bad risky behavior in the long run. Thank you.
Any thoughts po on the sin tax law, Ate Maydi or Dr. Alampay? Dr. Alampay, okay.
I'm good.
Are there any other questions from our audience? Okay, it seems that would be our last question from the audience. I would like to ask our panelists to give their sort of final thoughts before we close our webinar for today. Let's start with Ate Maydi. Final thoughts.
Kuya, matagal ako nagre-reflect. Ito muna.
Sige
Balikan
po.
mo ako.
Sige po. Dr. Alampay, because ikaw munang nag-present naman.
Sige po, yung naisip ko lang po dun sa mga issues ng kabataan ngayon. Maganda rin pong pag-isipan na sometimes yung issues na yon ang dahilan kung bakit sila why they turn to risky behavior, whether it's drinking or taking drugs. So it's also good to reflect on what the root causes of their problems are instead of just seeing the outcomes. Na pag minsan isip natin, problema ang pag-iinom, problema ang drugs, without actually thinking of ano ba yung root causes. So of course, sometimes may dynamic yung dalawang bagay na yon na umiinom ka kaya hindi ka nag-aaral, bumabagsak ka. Pero usually, meron namang mas malalim na dahilan. And I think that's siguro something that hindi masyado pa na-stress dun sa study. It's just that we looked at it independent of each other, but we also have to think of it as a system that interacts with each other. The other thing is, of course, gusto ko lang stress that again, in supporting the youth, you have to remember that they operate in different systems, whether it's the family system or whether it's the school system or the larger community system. So pang message ko lang sa SK, hindi niyo naman kailangan sarilihin yung problema na yon. You have other institutions that you could work with. And when you devise your plans or programs, always bear in mind that there are avenues or institutions that you can work with, and you need not develop things or programs on your own. Parang ganon.
Sir Mel?
I would like to support yung as a rejoinder to Professor Alampay. Totoo yun. Now, traditionally, it's supposed to be the leader planning for the constituents. But this time, I think we need also to emphasize, we need also consensus building, a different leadership style, and we can learn from NCPAG how these things are going the participatory way. So it's changing the mindset also. And you cannot just stick on your own ideas and impose this one. True, meron pa rin mga ganon, pero I think the best way to the journey there is really to come up with the consensus. Two things that can happen kasi one is the consequences of the consensus building is one that generates more people to participate. And if the ideas are integrated in the greater ideas, then definitely you have participation, greater participation, ownership of the program, and sustainability because they're part of the planning, they're part of the implementation and all these things. And I agree, but this is not a learning by experience. It can be supplemented by also educating yourself, just like attending these webinars. And the best education is really sharing your experience through this. Kung wala nga lang ng COVID, so mas padami na sana tayong mga ganitong face-to-face, and we will learn a lot from the experience of everybody, especially our prestigious academe staff in the Philippine education system. They have a lot of valid
Mel,
data.
any final thoughts, Ate Maydi?
Yes, ang final thoughts ko, I'd like to make it more sa personal na level ng mga kasama natin sa talk show na to. Bata man o matanda, LGU ka man na official or hindi, moving forward, learning from the conversation today and going back dun sa mga kinakaharap ninyong pressure to deliver in the midst of this pandemic. Please remember, you're never alone. You're never alone. Nandito kami. We can journey together in adapting to this very chaotic na sitwasyon that we have right now. As a young person, you have the energy, you have the bright ideas to come up with innovative na mga solusyon and what you want to do is wag kang magpatali sa mga constraints. Use that passion to inspire yourself and to inspire others. Tapos let's think together, magtulungan tayo. Sama-sama, we can do this.
Okay, thank you, Ate Maydi. Before we let our panel go, I would like to bring in our director who's been listening into our conversation very patiently for her summation and also her her reactions and her closing remarks. So, friends, please welcome our director at UPCLRG, Professor Alice Celestino. Ate Alice?
Okay. Thank you so much. And can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So akala ko nakamute ako eh. So I enjoyed today's discussion. Again, it's really a very interesting talk show webinar that we have. And we learned a lot from our guest resource persons who have shared with us their insights, their ideas. It is very encouraging to know that the city government of Makati has an admirable and credible program for the youth, yung Pag-asa sa Makati program, wherein they collaborated with the national government, particularly DepEd, to win away the school children from engaging in risky activities like substance abuse, alcohol, cigarettes, etc., etc. I think this can be replicated in other urban areas. I'm sure that cities can definitely learn from the experience of Makati. As for the rural areas naman, perhaps we can do a similar study. We need comparative studies because government need evidence to come up with decisions on how to respond to this problem of risky behavior. At the national level, it is good that we have the National Youth Commission at the forefront. At their end, NYC has crafted very good programs for the youth, and they have this PYPD that could be localized. Yun yung plano nila. It is understood, however, that collaboration is the key for government programs to work or to function and to make it more sustainable. Hence, it was suggested that NYC should not only collaborate with the ILG, but with DepEd in the aspect of integrating in the DepEd curriculum this particular concern, and many more government agencies and academic institutions for that matter. Well, guiding the youth, protecting the youth is not just the responsibility of a few government agencies, but it is a responsibility of the whole nation. We have the SKs everywhere. We need to dialogue with them more because they are actually the foot soldiers in the effort to guide and protect the youth. Many adults have negative impressions about the youth today: carefree, careless, selfish, etc., etc. It is not the fault of the youth that they were born in this generation. So it's a great challenge for parents, for teachers, for guardians, and all the other stakeholders to shape them, empower them to become the leaders of tomorrow. And in turn, it is hoped that they will do the same in the future. So with this, I would like to extend my gratitude to all our guests, to the participants, our resource persons. We have Dr. Alampay, who shared with us the results of the study that we did last year. To Maideline Lim from the project director of the Pag-asa program. Very interesting at saka natutuwa talaga ako sa Pag-asa sa Makati na program ninyo. Maraming matututunan yung ibang LGUs sa ginawa ninyo. And perhaps hindi lang sa arts yung focus ng intervention for the other LGUs. And of course, to our partner in NYC, si Mel Santelio, for sharing his insights, his thoughts about youth programs or interventions for the youth. And to our team, congratulations sa CLRG team for pulling out another interesting webinar, a talk show rather. And we hope that we will be bringing or we will be conducting more of this in the coming months. Salamat sa lahat, and I wish you well. So, are there other more reminders, Paeng?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Maraming salamat po, Ate Alice, our director at CLRG.
Lola.
We flashed the certificates that we are going to give virtually to our panelists. So we would like to thank again Dr. Erwin Alampay, Kuya Erwin, um, Miss Madeline Lim, Ate Mady from Davao, and our eldest Kuya, joke lang, si Kuya Mel from the National Youth Commission. So thank you very much for sharing your time and joining us this morning. So before we finally bring this webinar talk show to a close, we would like to give you some reminders. Yes. So we would like to. Ate Alice had already thanked our team, but we would like to. I would like to personally thank those who are working behind the scenes. So we have our course manager, Miss Ellie Kureg, our hosts, Prejan Prieto and Maki Asuncion, and those zooming outside of Manila who are handling participant interaction. We have Lou Villar Santos and Miss Patty Batdu. Okay, so if you are into reading, especially since we are now in the lockdown, you would like to read our latest publication, which is the book, our book of readings, copyrighted for 2020. We have different topics. This is part of our local government in the Philippines series. We have local governance, self-organization, capacity building, e-local governments, barangays in areas for reform, fiscal data openness, and other topics. And the book is available for only 600 pesos plus shipping fee. So just contact us through our usual channels, which we will flash at the end of the reminders. Next, we are also doing a weekly digest for COVID-19 news. So you can check our Facebook page or our website, localgov.up.edu.ph. The digests are available. If you're already stressed with the daily news, you can be just stressed when the digests come. So we're sort of collating all the news for everyone. Okay, and also final reminders for those who would like to receive your certificates. The certificates will be released within 7 working days. Those who will be eligible for a certificate must have been a registered participant. You should have tuned in for at least 70% of the webinar and answered the feedback form. We have a QR code and the link posted in the next slide. You can scan the QR code. It will take you to the feedback form, which is in our website. You can ask you can email us if you still want to get the link. If you're unable to scan the QR code, we will answer your requests in the chat box as we close the webinar. Okay, and so yeah, so continue to follow us for further announcements for our upcoming webinars. So if you're not following us yet on Facebook, please do. We're trying to extend public service as much as possible for free through our webinars. Okay, and final request, can we now request everyone to turn on your cameras for a group picture, a Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi ba yun? Or a selfie with all of us. So those who haven't left, yeah. So let's do this for maybe a minute, just to let our my colleagues to get a screen grab of everyone. So smile. Ano bang sinasabi pag nagse-selfie? Okay? Hold that smile for 10 seconds. Oh, I'm just trying to make you smile.
Look up, look down.
Look down or jump shot? Jump shot.
Jump shot na lang.
Jump shot. Okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I think that's our last activity for our webinar for today. I would like to thank everyone for continuing to watch our webinars, and I would like to thank our panelists for sharing their time. And hopefully, we will be able to see you again in our future engagements, whether that's online or face-to-face. Hopefully soon, face-to-face. Maraming salamat po. Have a good day. It's almost lunchtime. Have a good lunch. Maraming salamat po.
Salamat po.